Hi, Rick Harsh, backlit. Um, I had an accidental event happen recently. This book of mine, I don't know if you can see it. Maybe well, how can the light go? It's called Rick and Jack in Croatia. I wrote this last January, and um, I when I sent Roberto Segrov the copies of Decreation, his personal copies, the author copies. He wrote the book. I guess I included a bunch of other books, and this was one of them. And he read it. You know, be damned. You know, a writer reading. Um, Never yet. No, that's Slovene. Um, but he did a really nice thing. He really liked the book, which was very pleasing to me. You know, when you write a book, you hope that Roberto Segrov reads it, likes it, and he did. Um, so he wrote. He told me a lot of things on WhatsApp that he liked about it, and he wrote me in Spanish because he's that's his main tongue. He wrote with his Spanish tongue. He pulled his tongue out and he started writing, and he wrote um, something that he thought, well, that he's from the United States, so he only knows one language, which is only partially true. I only partially know the language. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is my Slovene is probably at the A2 EU level, which means it's still pretty much beginners. But I know a lot of words. Um, Razprodaya, that's a pretty big word. Can't remember what it means. Something to do with sales. And there's more words. Nevrijetno is one of them I just used. So he read the book Rick and Jack in Croatia, and then he translated for me, just for me. He translated what he wrote, and I'm going to read it to you, and you're going to be bored. But what the hell? Self-indulgence. It's not something I indulge in by myself very often, but it's called No Man is an Island. He even puts a Borgesian, Jorge Luis Borges, epigraph. It's only a page and a half, but he puts an epigraph. In that light which fades, an empire or a firefly. Oh, no, is that light? That's how it makes sense. Is that light which fades an empire or a firefly? Jorge Luis Borges. I think you get where this is going. Um, so here's what he said. The title is No Man is an Island, which is a very clever title. And I don't know if you'll get from this why it's clever, but if you listen closely, you might. The Irish painter Francis Bacon remarked that he was captivated by, indeed, he was also a captive of, those photographs of wild animals in which they died, hunted, lived. He said that, in particular, the image of an animal posed a question because the captured moment was part of a story forever anonymous. Once the animal was just depicted on the prairie or at the crossroads, it could no longer be claimed that the episode informed us about the individual. One looks at the photograph, and the animal becomes a metonymy for the species. Its essence forgotten, or as Bacon put it, interrogated with its improbable history. What happened to this being after the snapshot? Life. The human animal interprets the drama, one it cannot penetrate, because it is infected by the disease of memory. Unlike the beast that dwells in the wild and moves along the trajectory of its existence, accumulating actions that lead to another day of survival, the human can only inhabit if it remembers. But memory itself took my eye off it. Should never do that. Okay. The human animal interprets the drama one it cannot penetrate because it is infected by the disease of memory. Unlike the beast that dwells in the wild and moves along the trajectory of its existence, accumulating actions that lead to another day of survival, the human can only inhabit if it remembers. But memory itself bears the structure of the asterism. The syntax proposed by Rick Harsh and Rick and Jack in Croatia is that of a nebular mass in which the asterisms overlap, linking in a specular manner the microhistory of Unamuno with history itself. The effect, however, distances itself from Herodotus's conception of a narration of events shaped by a sort of intersubjectivity convenient to the interests of the oppressor, transforming historical narrative into an assault upon an objectively tortured reality. For Harsh, me, personal history is the whole of history. The domestic intertwines with the geopolitical and, subtly but with irony, bends both surfaces, the private and the public, into a new substance. The nature of this narrating substance makes no concessions, and the family story, relationships with others, and the body itself reveal a depth of experience that is also shaped by the echoes and cries of war's burning tale. The result, quoting Bacon once more, is an aesthetic manifestation that violently hurls us back into our own lives with a superlative effect no longer. Let's try that again. The result, quoting Bacon once more, is an aesthetic manifestation that violently hurls us back into our own lives with a superlative effect. No longer is one's life merely a singularity, but rather it adds to the multiple singularities of the rest of humankind, all fractals of the same narrative, consequence, and generative starting point of what happens in juxtaposition as part of the entire canvas of human history. Rick and Jack in Croatia is an angry memoir of how a life unravels despite and because of the great events that shape humanity with blows of hammer, shrapnel, and radiation. The solipsism of onanism is the search in unattainable self-indulgence, an urgent, painful masturbation that never achieves climax because it is interrupted by the cry of that part of the species which is exterminated. Page 2. At the same time, Harsh deconstructs the design of both the autobiographical and historical genres, dissolving the effect of progression through the current of consciousness, which lacks origin and destination, and expresses itself as unreliable simultaneity, because memory is not memory, but the memory of how the event was perceived at the moment it was lived. Yeah, I didn't stress that very well, but I think you get the point. In other words, the space of memory is accessed through a gaze altered by passion. As a coda or encore, Harsh leaps from the flaming train of human history to enter a small square of stillness, the snapshot in which he appears with his father in Croatia. Contrary to Carver, in his poem, Photograph of My Father in His 22nd Year, for Harsh it is impossible to make even the smallest concession, and that final moment is not entered as a memory, but as a dream in which the dreamer does not recognize himself. but rather is unknown to himself, for whom it is impossible to see and conceive himself as the dreamed being. The final line of the text is a slap, or in the best Harshian style, a loogie. I guess that's Colombian English. A loogie spat in the reader's face as the narrative's will to narrate is perceived as canceled. The story was told reluctantly because it had to be, because the human animal cannot not remember. Only and only remains what Mishima affirms. I love this paragraph. In the moments just before the cataclysm of World War II, just before the extermination of the youth in the soldiers who joyfully marched to death, there is the light that cuts through the trees in a furious spring sunset. These trees, seen as they are by the Japanese writer, will never disappear and will endure forever in that image. As for the human drama, it will fade away like an overexposed photograph in the history of the planet. Roberto Segrovian, September 2025, Bogota, under a scorching sun. That's really nice. You know, writers are. I commented to Mr. Segrovian, or Senor Segrovian, that this is right. I accept this. I mean, I'm grateful that he did this, and I'm going to keep this. I'm going to probably this is the photograph that this was based on. Maybe a little more light, oh, there we catch some light. Okay, you can see it kind of there. Yeah, this photograph was given to me by my mother last Christmas, and it's of me and my father in Croatia in about 2023, because the Iraq War was going on, and well, yeah. So, it's an interesting photo to me. I look at ease. My father seems to have his arm resting on my knee, so there's an intimacy to it, but a very casual one. My father's smile is a genuine smile. He's smiling for the camera, but he wants to. Anyway, it's an interesting photo for me and very personal. Sparks flew in this relationship. My parents were Republicans in the United States, and I was a young. No, I wasn't young anymore, I guess. But I was very much against the war in Iraq, and there were some arguments about it. But there was something about this photograph just really sparked the need to write about this, and that because this captures a very nice father-son moment, and at the same time, it's happening shortly before a giant argument about the Iraq War, and so you have the what he refers to here, Segar, the very, very personal, and in this I can see because I have a memory of this event, of these days, of this period, which ended with me in the hospital. Did my mother beat my ass? No, neither did my father. But after the day after a big fight, argument about the Iraq War, I got hit by a car. I was on a bicycle, and I dislocated my shoulder, broke my arm, and got a cut over my eye that bled into it. And I was in the street. I got hit by the car, and I was kind of mangled, as I just suggested. And my first thought, I blacked out, but only briefly, a second or two. And I came to in the middle of the street, aware that I'd been hit by a car, and somehow that he was still behind me, like he stopped when he hit me. And my first thought was, God, get the fuck out of the street before he hits you again. And so I sort of um, crawled like a broken creature because I was broken. I crawled onto the median, and then I lay there with this cut bleeding into my eye, and I was thinking, am I dying? I mean, I wasn't really taking stock of all the things that might be wrong with me, but the shock of it, knowing I was broken, and climbing, or scrambling, or whatever I was doing to get onto the median, um, and then laying there bleeding. It seemed to take the ambulance a long time to come, and bleeding into my eye, and that, I guess, the starkness of that blood into the eye made me think I was really dying. I didn't die. Uh, I mean, I'm still here right now, which suggests a sort of life, but I didn't die, and ended up in the hospital. So, and this was probably like, can you see it? This was probably a day or two before the big argument, and looks like it was a nice time. It's very, it's a rare moment of absolute calm and um, something, I don't know. But so I wrote the book, a microline, by the way, that we sell at Press, and I'm hoping that by saying all these things and reading this, that one of the frequent commenters on the page, someone going by the name of William Gaddis, or Gass, we always get those mixed up. I keep getting it mixed up in honor of Mr. Gass. But this Gass or Gaddis, I think, is an Instagram friend or foe. I don't know, because I just read one of the comments he made um, about in response to my latest video before this one, that suggested that well, I'm not sure what it suggested, because he said, yeah, I guess Mr. Harsh or Rick or whatever didn't like my prose, and he said, I wish you would only read one page. Something about reading one page. And, I don't know who you are right now, Mr. Mr. Gaddis. Maybe I did at one point. I mean, I get a lot of customers from Corona Samstat. We mail to 40 different countries at least. And you could be anywhere. And I don't know who you are, but I don't wish you any ill. And if you got something you want me to see, instead of writing down in the comments here, which is, you're welcome to do. I love comments. I can talk about them. Write me again. Write an email again and say, it's me, and here's what I think. Who are these special people that you publish, like Luke Dellin? You only read one sentence. Well, the sentence I read was for the video, but I actually read the whole book because in both cases, Orbo and the Godhead and Mnemes Stoned, which is the most recent one. So if you got a grief, if you're upset about something, let me know. And, if you got a particularly great page that you think I won't, yeah, the other thing he said, the thing that made it weird is he said something about I might not like that, or I might have someone reject a book for me. And I responded in there. I said, yeah, I got Luca Brasi does my rejections for me. They never come back. So invitation to anyone. I'm not a brilliant editor. I don't do much editing at all. I'm just called a chief editor because I run a press. But I think we've done great. But we've done great because there's a really horrible economic environment for writers. But at the same time, there are lots of really, really good writers and great writers. our Canadians, we need to expand the Canadians, not expand them individually, but we need to get more Canadians. Um, Although I'm happy with the ones we've got. Bill Clark, is fantastic. Jeff Bursey, um, Lee Thompson, Tim Conley, um, Nick Vorel, uh, and soon we're going to have the Idjit in Chief, um, Quentin Ferrari. Um, I read something that he sent me recently, and hey, Mr. Gaddis or Gas, it was under a page, and he just said, "What do you think of this?" Um, and he was unsure of it because he got a kind of workshop style um, uh, evaluation from an acquaintance, friend, or whatever, and I thought it was nonsense. It was interesting. It was multi-stranded and imaginative and short. Thank God it was short, Mr. Gass or Mr. Gaddis. It was, because by reading it and not suffering in the least made me want to publish it, but it wasn't the book length, so I didn't. Anyway, I didn't know I was going to morph into the conversation with one of my snipers. Um, have someone reject books for me? Why the fuck would I need that? You know how easy it is to read something and say, I don't know, probably not. I mean, because we're way behind on the books we want to publish, and we've got a big list of them, and we're hoping that an infusion of money from the outside, not a donation. Well, it is a donation, but it's more of an investment by me. I'm getting some money, and I'm going to invest it in the press, and I think it'll help us catch up on some of the books that we've allowed to go out of print. And I wish you were there right now, Mr. Gaddis or Gas, because you know what I would ask you? You want me to read this again?